The rain poured hard on the cracked pavement of Millbrook, a small town tucked into the humid corner of Georgia where cotton fields gave way to strip malls, and the past never quite let go of the present. Two young officers stepped out of their cruiser, adrenaline pumping after a late-night call about a suspicious man in uniform loitering near the closed hardware store on Main Street. Under the dim streetlight stood a tall black man, calm but firm, wearing a crisp police jacket with insignia they didn't recognize. His posture was ramrod straight, his hands visible at his sides, his eyes taking in everything with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent decades reading situations before they exploded. "Hands where we can see them," Officer Kyle Peterson barked, his hand hovering near his weapon. He was 26, 3 years on the force, and still believed every call could be his last. The man slowly raised his hands, palms open. "I'm a police officer," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of authority without raising in volume. "Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Daniels. I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "Sure you are," Peterson's partner, Officer Brett Hammond, muttered. He was younger, barely 2 years in uniform, and his father had been a cop in this town for 30 years. "That's military insignia on a police jacket. You stealing valor or something?" Marcus Daniels didn't flinch. He'd been in situations like this before, though never quite this ironic. "My identification is in my right jacket pocket. May I reach for it?" "Keep your hands up," Peterson ordered, moving forward. He patted down Marcus roughly, found the wallet, flipped it open. His flashlight illuminated a law enforcement ID, but the agency designation meant nothing to him. "This doesn't look right." "Because you don't know what you're looking at," Marcus said, still calm. "I'm scheduled to start as your new police chief tomorrow morning. I arrived early to get familiar with the town." Hammond laughed, a nervous sound. "Our new chief?" "Right. And I'm the mayor." "Turn around," Peterson said. "Hands behind your back." Marcus complied. He could fight this, could assert his authority, could make these young men's careers very difficult in the next 60 seconds. But he'd learned long ago that some lessons needed to be experienced, not explained. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, the metal cold and familiar. He'd put these on 1,000 suspects in his career. Never thought he'd wear them himself. Just as Hammond was reaching for his radio to call in the arrest, headlights cut through the rain. A police SUV screeched to a stop, and Sergeant Patricia Reynolds practically fell out of the driver's seat, her face pale with horror. "Take those off," she yelled, running toward them. "Take those off right now." "That's the new chief, Chief Daniels." The color drained from Peterson's face. Hammond's hand froze on his radio. Marcus turned slowly to face Reynolds, who he recognized from the briefing materials he'd studied on the drive down. "Sergeant Reynolds," he said evenly. "Good to finally meet you in person." "Chief, I am so sorry. I got a call from the mayor's office that you'd checked into your hotel early, and when I heard the dispatch," she turned to the two young officers, fury and mortification warring on her features. "Uncuff him. Now." Peterson's hands shook as he unlocked the handcuffs. "Sir, we didn't." Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the familiar indentation marks. He looked at both officers for a long moment, then at Reynolds, then back at the two men who'd just handcuffed their new boss. "We'll discuss this tomorrow," he said quietly. "All of us." 8 a.m. sharp. By morning, news of the incident had spread through the Millbrook Police Department like wildfire. Officers clustered in small groups, whispering, avoiding eye contact with Peterson and Hammond, who sat at their desks looking like they were waiting for execution. Marcus arrived at 7:30, walking through the station in full uniform. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. He nodded to each person he passed, made eye contact, let them see him as a man, not a headline. Sergeant Reynolds met him at the door to his new office. "The entire department is assembled in the briefing room, sir. As you requested." "Thank you, Sergeant." "And the mayor?" "Wants to see you at 10. He's already fielded 3 calls from the local newspaper." Marcus nodded. "Let's address our people first." The briefing room went silent when he entered. 37 officers, ranging from rookies to 20-year veterans, all standing at attention. He saw the curiosity in their eyes, the wariness, the judgment. Peterson and Hammond stood in the back corner, looking like they wanted the floor to swallow them. Marcus walked to the front of the room and set his coffee down on the podium. He didn't speak immediately. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Finally, he rolled up his right sleeve, showing the red mark still visible on his wrist from the handcuffs. "Good morning, I'm Chief Marcus Daniels. Some of you had a different introduction to me than others." A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. "I'm not here to punish anyone," he continued. "I'm not here to make an example of Officers Peterson and Hammond, though I suspect they've punished themselves quite enough in the last 8 hours. He looked directly at them. What happened last night wasn't malicious. It was procedural failure combined with implicit bias. And if we're honest, it could have happened to any of us. He paused, letting that sink in. But here's what I need you to understand. If you can't see the man beyond the color, if you can't look at someone and assess the actual situation instead of the assumptions you bring to it, you can't protect this town. You'll miss the real threats, because you're too busy chasing the ones that exist only in your conditioning. Marcus scanned the room. I've worn this badge longer than most of you have been alive. I've served in 3 different departments, run community policing programs, trained tactical units, and testified before Congress on police reform. I didn't come here because this was the easiest posting. I came here because Millbrook needs change, and change doesn't happen by burning down systems. It happens by being the fire inside them. He picked up his coffee, took a sip. We're going to rebuild trust in this community. We're going to review every procedure, every policy, every arrest pattern from the last 5 years. We're going to learn how to see people again. And it starts now, in this room, with each of you making a choice about what kind of officer you want to be. No one spoke. Marcus nodded. Dismissed. Shift supervisors, stay behind. Peterson, Hammond, you're with me. In his office, Marcus gestured for the 2 young officers to sit. They perched on the edge of their chairs, backs rigid with tension. Breathe, Marcus said. You're not fired. The relief that washed over their faces was almost comical. But you are on administrative duty for the next 2 weeks, while we conduct a formal review of last night's incident. You'll be working directly with Sergeant Reynolds on a comprehensive audit of our traffic stop procedures and implicit bias training program. Peterson swallowed hard. Sir, I just want to say. Save it, Marcus interrupted, not unkindly. I don't need your apologies. I need your commitment to being better. That's all. After they left, Marcus turned to his computer and began reviewing department files. What he found in the first hour made his jaw clench. Arrest statistics showed a disturbing pattern. Black residents were 3 times more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested than white residents, even though contraband was found at equal rates. Use of force incidents were disproportionately high in minority neighborhoods, and several complaints against officers had been quietly shelved without proper investigation. There was a knock at his door. A man in his early 60s entered without waiting for permission, his bearing suggesting he didn't need it. Former Chief Tom Rutherford. Marcus had read about him, the 30-year veteran who'd retired 6 months ago amid growing criticism about departmental culture. Chief Daniels, Rutherford said, extending a hand. Thought I'd stop by, welcome you to town. Marcus shook it, noting the firmness that bordered on aggressive. Appreciate that, Mr. Rutherford. Tom, please. We're all family here. He settled into a chair uninvited. Heard about last night. Unfortunate situation. You know how it is, young officers, honest mistake. Is it? Marcus asked quietly. Rutherford's smile thinned. Well, you have to understand, this town has certain ways of doing things. Ways that work. Now, I respect that they wanted to bring in some fresh blood, get ahead of all this reform talk. But between you and me, some things don't need fixing. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Such as? The relationships we've built. The understanding between this department and the community leaders. The way we handle situations before they become situations, if you know what I mean. I don't, Marcus said flatly. Why don't you spell it out for me? Rutherford's genial mask slipped slightly. Just saying, there's a reason crime stayed low on my watch. We knew who to watch, who to pressure, who to leave alone. You start turning over rocks, you might not like what crawls out. Thanks for the advice, Marcus said, standing. I'll keep it in mind. After Rutherford left, Marcus sat in silence for a moment. Then he called Reynolds into his office. Tell me about Tom Rutherford. Reynolds chose her words carefully. He's respected by some, feared by others. His approach to policing was old school. Very old school. Give me specifics. There were allegations. Nothing that stuck, but patterns. Excessive force complaints that disappeared. Evidence that went missing. A shooting 6 years ago, unarmed black teenager named David Morrison. The investigation concluded it was justified, but there were questions. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Get me that file. All of it. The community meeting on Thursday night was packed. Marcus had requested it through the mayor's office, wanting to face the citizens of Millbrook directly. The high school auditorium held maybe 300 people, and every seat was filled. Reverend James Mitchell, head of the local NAACP chapter, stood to speak first. Chief Daniels, we appreciate you being here. But we've heard promises before. What we need is action. Accountability. Justice for the families who've lost loved ones to police violence in this town. Marcus nodded. You're right to be skeptical. Words are cheap. So here's what I'm committing to, and I want every person in this room to hold me to it. Within 60 days, I will complete a full review of use of force policies. Within 90 days, we will implement body cameras for every officer. Within 6 months, we will establish a civilian oversight board with real authority to review complaints. What about David Morrison? A woman's voice called from the back. What about my son? Marcus recognized her from the file photo. Angela Morrison, mother of the teenager killed 6 years ago. She stood, tears streaming down her face. Your officers killed my baby, and called it justified. What are you going to do about that? The room went silent. Marcus took a breath. Mrs. Morrison, may I speak with you after this meeting? Privately? No, she said. Everyone needs to hear this. Will you reopen the investigation? Marcus met her eyes. I'll review the case personally. If there's evidence of wrongdoing that was overlooked or suppressed, I'll pursue it, regardless of who it implicates. That's my promise to you. Justice will not wear a color in this department anymore. The applause that followed was hesitant, uncertain. But it was there. After the meeting, Marcus sat with Angela Morrison in an empty classroom. She clutched a worn photograph of her son, a smiling teenager in a high school football uniform. David was 17, she said quietly. Walking home from his girlfriend's house at 10 p.m. They said he matched the description of a robbery suspect. Said he reached for something. He was reaching for his phone to call me. Her voice broke. They found it in his hand after they shot him. 4 times. Marcus felt the weight of every badge he'd ever worn. I can't change what happened, Mrs. Morrison. But I can promise you that I'll look at every piece of evidence with fresh eyes. If there was a cover-up, I'll expose it. If there was negligence, I'll address it. Your son deserves that. You deserve that. She looked at him for a long moment. My lawyer said we can't sue anymore. Statute of limitations. So all I have left is the truth. Can you give me that? I'll try, Marcus said. That's all I can promise. But I'll try with everything I have. The Morrison file was a masterclass in bureaucratic obfuscation. Witness statements were incomplete. Forensic reports raised questions that were never followed up on. The dash camera footage from the police car had mysteriously corrupted. And the investigating detective's notes contained gaps large enough to drive a truck through. Marcus spread the documents across his desk and called in Detective Laura Brennan, the senior investigator who'd worked the case. Talk me through it, he said without preamble. Brennan, a 15-year veteran with a reputation for thoroughness, looked uncomfortable. It was 6 years ago, Chief. I'm not sure what I can add to the report. Try. You wrote here that Morrison's movements were consistent with reaching for a weapon. But the weapon was a cell phone. In his right hand. You also noted he was left-handed. Brennan's jaw tightened. I wrote what the evidence showed. Did you? Marcus pulled out another page. Your preliminary report, written the night of the shooting, says, quote, unclear if suspect motion justified lethal response. Recommend further investigation. But the final report, submitted 2 weeks later, concludes the shooting was justified. What changed? I was instructed to close the case. By whom? Brennan stood. Chief, with all due respect, I have a family. I have a pension. And I have to work with these people. Sit down, detective. Marcus's voice was steel. You took an oath. Same as me. Same as everyone in this building. That oath doesn't have a clause about job security. She sat slowly. It was Rutherford. He called me into his office, told me the case was closed, told me to align my final report with the officer's statement. Said the town didn't need the drama, that it would tear the community apart. And you complied. I had 3 kids and a mortgage, and I'd seen what happened to officers who crossed him. She met his eyes. I'm not proud of it. But yes, I complied. Marcus was silent for a moment. What do you think really happened that night? Brennan took a shaky breath. I think Officer Timothy Walsh panicked. I think he saw a black kid in a hoodie, and his training failed him. I think David Morrison was reaching for his phone, probably to record the stop like kids do now. And I think Walsh fired before his brain caught up with his trigger finger. Where's Walsh now? Still on the force. Works patrol in the West District. Got commended for bravery, 6 months after the shooting. Marcus closed the file. Thank you for your honesty, Detective. What I'm about to ask requires you to be brave in a different way. I need you to write a new report. A true one. With all the details you were told to omit. Can you do that? Brennan's hands trembled slightly. If I do this, I'll be a pariah in my own department. Maybe, Marcus agreed. Or maybe you'll give other officers permission to tell their own truths. Maybe you'll show them what integrity looks like. She stood, squared her shoulders. I'll have it on your desk by Monday. The backlash was swift. By the end of the week, Marcus had received a formal letter from the Police Benevolent Association, demanding he cease his witch hunt against veteran officers. The mayor called him in for a discussion about maintaining department morale. And someone spray-painted "Go Home" across his car windshield in the station parking lot. Reynolds found him studying the graffiti at 6 a.m. Sir, we're reviewing security footage. We'll find who did this. It's fine, Marcus said quietly. It's just paint. It's not fine, Reynolds insisted. This is intimidation. It's unacceptable. Marcus turned to face her. Sergeant, in my 28 years in law enforcement, I've been called every name you can imagine. I've had my life threatened, my competence questioned, my humanity denied. This, he gestured at the car. This is nothing. What matters is whether we have the courage to do what's right, when doing what's right makes us unpopular. Detective Brennan submitted her supplemental report, Reynolds said. It's damning good. Schedule a meeting with Officer Walsh for tomorrow morning. I want his union representative present. That night, Marcus returned to his temporary rental house and found an envelope shoved under the door. No address, no stamp. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. Your father died for nothing. So will you. He sat heavily on the couch, the paper in his hands. His father, Officer James Daniels, killed during a traffic stop when Marcus was 12. Shot by a scared kid who thought the flashlight in his father's hand was a gun. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now investigating a case with eerie parallels. His phone rang. Unknown number. Chief Daniels? This is Timothy Walsh. I heard you want to talk to me. That's correct, Officer Walsh. Tomorrow at 9. I know what you're doing, Walsh said, his voice tight. You're trying to destroy me to make a name for yourself. You're using that kid's death to push some agenda. David Morrison, Marcus said quietly. His name was David Morrison. And I'm not using his death for anything. I'm trying to understand what really happened. I told the truth 6 years ago. None of this changes anything. Then you have nothing to worry about. See you tomorrow, Officer Walsh. Marcus hung up and sat in the darkness of his unfurnished living room. This was the lonely part of leadership nobody talked about. The nights when you carried the weight of impossible choices, when doing the right thing meant standing alone, when the easiest path was to look away and preserve the peace. But he'd never been good at easy. Officer Timothy Walsh arrived with his union representative and a lawyer. He was 31 now, had been 25 the night he shot David Morrison. He wore his uniform like armor, his face carefully blank. Marcus gestured to the chairs. Thank you for coming, Officer Walsh. I want to review the Morrison shooting with you. My client gave a full statement 6 years ago, the lawyer interjected. This interview borders on harassment. I'm conducting a case review, which is within my authority as chief, Marcus said calmly. Officer Walsh is not under arrest. He's not even a suspect. I simply want to understand what happened from his perspective. Walsh leaned back. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? I am. Every day. But I followed protocol. The kid made a sudden movement. I thought he was armed. Walk me through it, Marcus said. From the beginning. Walsh's jaw worked. I was on patrol. Dispatch reported a robbery at the convenience store on 5th. Suspect description was vague. Black male, teens to 20s. Dark hoodie. I saw Morrison about 6 blocks from the scene, heading in the opposite direction. But the description matched, so I stopped him. Did he run? No. He stopped when I called out. But he was nervous. Agitated. Wouldn't look at me directly. What did you do? I approached, identified myself, asked for ID. He said he didn't have it on him. I asked him to keep his hands visible. He put them in his hoodie pocket. I ordered him to remove them. He pulled them out fast, and there was something in his hand. It was dark, I thought, his voice cracked. I thought it was a gun. It was a phone, Marcus said gently. I know that now. Walsh's composure was cracking. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see his face every time I close my eyes? But in that moment, in that split second, I made the choice I was trained to make. my life or his. And I chose mine. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Officer Walsh, did Chief Rutherford ever discuss this case with you? The lawyer tensed. Don't answer that. It's a simple question, Marcus said. I'm trying to understand the chain of events, not build a criminal case. Walsh looked at his lawyer, then back at Marcus. He told me to stick to my statement. Said the investigation would clear me if I didn't change my story, he said. He said the kid probably had it coming anyway, that he matched the profile, and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Detective Brennan's investigation? Rutherford told me it was just a formality. That he'd make sure it concluded the way it should. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, Officer Walsh. I need you to put what you just told me in a sworn statement. My client isn't admitting to anything, the lawyer said quickly. I'm not asking him to, Marcus replied. But if there was interference in a death investigation, that's a serious matter. Officer Walsh, you pulled the trigger. But you're not the only one responsible for what happened that night. The situation exploded when Marcus recommended formal charges be filed against Tom Rutherford for obstruction of justice and against Officer Walsh for negligent homicide. The police union called for a vote of no confidence. Half the department threatened to walk out. And the mayor summoned Marcus to his office with the city council present. You're tearing this town apart, Mayor Dennis Crawford said, his face red. We hired you to improve community relations, not start a civil war. I was hired to lead this department with integrity, Marcus replied. That's what I'm doing. Council member Patricia Hodges leaned forward. Chief Daniels, we appreciate your idealism. But there are practical considerations. We can't afford the lawsuits that will come from reopening old cases. We can't afford to lose half our police force. And frankly, we can't afford the damage to this town's reputation. Reputation. Marcus's voice was quiet but sharp. A young man died. His mother has lived without answers for 6 years. An officer's career was built on a lie. And you're worried about reputation. We're worried about the stability of this community, Crawford said. And right now, you're the biggest threat to that stability. Marcus stood. Then perhaps you should fire me. Because I won't stop. I won't look away. And I won't tell Mrs. Morrison that her son's death doesn't matter because it's inconvenient for the city budget. He walked out before they could respond. Back at the station, he found Sergeant Reynolds and Officer Kyle Peterson waiting in his office. Chief, Peterson said, his voice uncertain. Can we talk? Marcus gestured to the chairs. Both officers Saturday. Peterson looked at Hammond, who nodded encouragingly. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Peterson began. About that night I arrested you. About Officer Walsh. About what kind of cop I want to be. He took a breath. My dad was a cop here. Worked under Rutherford for 20 years. I grew up hearing war stories, learning about the thin blue line, believing that we always had to protect our own. But you're protecting people we're supposed to serve. Even when it costs you. Where are you going with this, officer? I want to testify about the department culture. About the things I've seen and ignored. About the way Walsh was celebrated after the Morrison shooting, how it sent a message to all of us that shooting first was acceptable if we were scared enough. Peterson's hands were shaking. I know it'll make me a pariah. But you said we have to choose what kind of officers we want to be. I'm choosing. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Are you prepared for the consequences? No, Peterson said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. You can't fix the system by burning it, you fix it by being the fire inside. Those were your words, sir. I'm trying to be that fire. Hammond cleared his throat. I'll testify too. We both will. Marcus looked at these two young officers who'd handcuffed him 2 weeks ago and now were willing to sacrifice their careers for the truth. Thank you, he said quietly. Both of you. Tom Rutherford was arrested on a Thursday morning, led out of his home in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. By evening, protests had erupted, some supporting the arrest, others condemning it as a political hit job. Marcus arrived at the detention center where Rutherford was being held. The former chief sat in the interview room looking older than his 62 years, the swagger gone. Satisfied? Rutherford asked bitterly. Marcus sat across from him. No. There's no satisfaction in any of this. You destroyed me. My reputation, my legacy, 30 years of service erased. You destroyed yourself, Marcus said quietly. I just exposed it. Rutherford leaned forward. You think you're so righteous. But you don't understand this town. You don't understand the deals that had to be made. The compromises necessary to keep the peace. That Morrison kid? He was trouble waiting to happen. Maybe Walsh jumped the gun, but he saved this community from a future problem. Marcus felt ice in his veins. He was 17 years old. He played football. He wanted to be a veterinarian. He was somebody's son. He was a statistic waiting to occur, Rutherford said. And now, because of your crusade, this department is in chaos. Officers are afraid to do their jobs. The community is divided. You think you're making things better? You're making them worse. Marcus stood. The only thing I'm making worse is your version of policing, where some lives matter less than others, where justice is a commodity to be traded. You're right, I don't understand your world. And I thank God for that. We never wanted you here, Rutherford spat. You were a diversity hire, a checkbox to make the city look progressive. They'll throw you away as soon as you're no longer useful. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But I'll go down standing for something that matters. Can you say the same? He walked out without looking back. The trial of Tom Rutherford lasted 3 weeks. Officer Walsh took a plea deal, no jail time, but his badge was permanently revoked. The civil lawsuit filed by Angela Morrison was settled by the city for an undisclosed amount. And Marcus Daniels survived his vote of no confidence by a margin of 2 votes. 1 year later, Millbrook was a different town. Body cameras were standard issue. The Civilian Oversight Board had reviewed 47 cases and sustained complaints in 19. Use of force incidents had dropped by 60%. And perhaps most significantly, community trust in the police department had begun, slowly, to rebuild. Marcus stood in the high school gymnasium, watching a new class of recruits receive their badges. Officer Kyle Peterson was among them, having completed additional training to become a certified field training officer. Next to him stood Brett Hammond, who'd just been promoted to sergeant. Chief Daniels? Angela Morrison approached him, her grandson holding her hand. I wanted to introduce you to David. We named him after my son. The little boy, maybe 4 years old, looked up at Marcus with solemn eyes. Grandma says you're a good policeman. Marcus knelt down to his level. I try to be. And maybe someday, if you want to be a police officer, you'll be even better. Maybe, the boy said seriously. But I want to be a vet. Like my uncle wanted to be. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He looked at Angela, who had tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. For giving me the truth. It doesn't bring him back, but it matters. It matters so much. After the ceremony, Marcus returned to his office. On the wall behind his desk hung 2 photographs. One was his father in uniform, taken a week before he died. The other was David Morrison in his football uniform, smiling at the camera with his whole life ahead of him. He'd placed them there as a reminder. A reminder that the badge he wore was both a privilege and a responsibility. A reminder that every decision he made affected real people with real lives and real dreams. A reminder that justice couldn't be selective, couldn't wear a color, couldn't bend to convenience or comfort. His phone buzzed with a text from Reynolds. Community meeting tonight. They're presenting you with some kind of award. You'll hate it. Marcus smiled. She knew him well. He did hate ceremonies and recognition. But he'd go, because that was part of the job too. Showing up. Being visible. Letting the community see that their police chief wasn't above them or beyond them, but part of them. Kyle Peterson appeared at his door. Sir, got a minute? Always. Come in. Peterson sat, looking nervous. I wanted to thank you. For giving me a second chance. For teaching me what this badge really means. You taught yourself, Marcus said. I just pointed you in the right direction. Can I ask you something? How did you stay calm that night? When Brett and I arrested you? I would have been furious. Marcus considered the question. I was angry. But anger without purpose is just noise. I knew that situation was a teaching moment, not just for you two, but for this entire department. If I'd responded with rage, I would have reinforced every negative stereotype. Instead, I chose to respond with dignity. With patience. With the understanding that we're all learning, all growing, all carrying our own biases that we have to confront. But how did you know we'd listen? That we'd change? I didn't, Marcus admitted. That was your choice to make. All I could do was model what leadership looks like, and hope it resonated. He smiled slightly. I'm glad it did. After Peterson left, Marcus sat in the quiet of his office. Through the window, he could see the town square where, a year ago, protesters had demanded change. Now, people walked their dogs, kids played in the fountain, life went on. He thought about the letter he'd received that morning from a woman in Baltimore, asking his advice on community policing initiatives. He thought about the 3 other departments that had reached out, wanting to learn from Millbrook's transformation. He thought about the slow, grinding work of changing institutional culture, one decision at a time. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. But it was real. His phone rang. It was his sister calling from Atlanta. "I saw the news story about the ceremony tonight. I'm proud of you, Marcus. Thanks, Denise. Though I'm not sure I deserve celebration for just doing my job." "That's exactly why you deserve it. Because you see it as just doing your job. Not everyone does." She paused. "Dad would be proud too." Marcus looked at his father's photograph. James Daniels, killed in the line of duty by a scared kid who saw a threat that didn't exist. The cycle of fear and violence that Marcus had spent his entire career trying to break. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I really hope so." That evening, at the community meeting, Mayor Crawford presented Marcus with a plaque commemorating his first year as chief. The inscription read, "For courage, integrity, and dedication to justice for all." Marcus accepted it graciously, then set it aside to address the crowd. "This belongs to all of us," he said. "To every officer who chose truth over comfort. To every community member who held us accountable. To every person who believed that we could be better, do better, serve better." He saw Angela Morrison in the third row, tears streaming down her face. He saw Kyle Peterson and Brett Hammond standing with their families, wearing their uniforms with pride. He saw Reverend Mitchell nodding approvingly. He saw the faces of a community that was learning to trust again. "A year ago, I arrived in this town as a stranger," Marcus continued. "I was handcuffed before I could even introduce myself. Some saw it as an embarrassment. I saw it as an opportunity to show that change is possible, that growth is possible, that redemption is possible. Not just for individuals, but for institutions." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We still have work to do. We'll still make mistakes. But we're committed to learning from them, to being transparent about them, to holding ourselves to the highest standard. Because you deserve nothing less. And because the badge I wear isn't a shield, it's a promise. A promise to serve with integrity, to protect with fairness, to seek justice without prejudice. You can't serve if you don't see," he concluded, echoing the words he'd spoken to his officers that first morning. "Look beyond color, look beyond assumptions, look beyond fear. Look for the truth. Look for the humanity in every person you encounter. Look for the possibility of redemption in every situation. That's how we build a department worthy of this community's trust. That's how we honor the memories of those we've failed. And that's how we create a legacy worth passing on to the next generation." The applause was thunderous. Marcus stepped down from the podium and walked directly to Angela Morrison. She stood and embraced him, and for a moment, in that crowded gymnasium, the weight of the past year lifted. "Thank you," she whispered again. "Thank you for seeing my son. For making them say his name." Marcus held her shoulders gently. "David Morrison. His name matters. His life mattered. And it always will." Later that night, back in his office, Marcus hung the plaque on the wall next to the two photographs. 3 reminders now, of sacrifice, of loss, and of hope. He sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new situations, new opportunities to either succeed or fail at living up to the standards he'd set. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The phone rang one last time. "Sergeant Reynolds." "Sir, we just got a call. Domestic disturbance on Elm Street. Officers are requesting your guidance on de-escalation." Marcus grabbed his jacket. "I'm on my way." Because that was the job. Not the ceremonies or the plaques or the recognition. The job was showing up, day after day, call after call, choosing to do right even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He walked out of the station into the cool night air. Somewhere in Millbrook, a family needed help. Officers needed guidance. Justice needed serving. And Chief Marcus Daniels, who'd arrived in this town in handcuffs, was exactly where he needed to be.